What's up, gang? Philip at Trade Genius. I'm going to go over some charts and get an update from our previous price action. I want to talk about this a little bit, the divergence we're currently seeing with the price of Bitcoin and the S&P 500. We'll also revisit the Delta chart and give an update on that. And I also wanted to look at some on-chain data. We need to take a look at the capitulation chart. And then I want to also talk about the S&P 500 because, like it or not, currently we do have correlation to it, and we need to talk about where we're going from here and how that affects Bitcoin. So without further ado, let's dive into this video.
Trade Genius.
All right, guys. So basically back to the S&P 500 chart, and we talked about on Friday, we left off with this red candle. We did see a little bit of down. This is a 4-hour chart. If we go to a one-day chart, you'll notice that we gapped higher. So I said, watch out for the overnight sessions, and it's going to give us clues as to what they're going to do. This is earnings week. So far, the initial earnings calls have been okay. Market doesn't seem too freaked out about it. I think, the market, you have to understand, like we talked about, market knows the severity of the bad news out there. And these moves are going to play out. These corrective cyclical bounces are going to play out. Okay, so regardless what the news really is, I think most of these destinations are mapped out. It's just which level do they get to. So we have pressed beyond the 50% retracement. Now we're heading for the 618, which is 2934. Again, that is from our highs to our lows. And it might be a little different on the futures, but this is the SPX chart on TradingView, the contract for difference index. So anyway, it's pretty close to the actual. The futures will be off a little bit from values here, but you get the idea. So we're still pressing higher. So I think what they're going to do is we're probably going to run. We may have some resistance around the 2880 level on the ES futures, but I think ultimately the destination is going to be, this the 618 retrace area. So depending on your chart, around the 2930 area or so on the SPX. So if we do press up there, okay, that's going to bring up Bitcoin to those higher levels that we talked about on the chart, which we'll get to here in a second. Here's the Delta. So what I'm looking for is the Delta to actually start turning up, because what I want to see is our trend on the Delta start to turn blue like this, and we're starting to see that, but I want to see 3-4 hour bars to confirm that, and then we'll get that expected color change. Break back above this weighted moving average of 65 will be key for me at 69.78. We came up, remember we talked about you're going to fade that move for your very short term traders. But I think ultimately, if you want a nice swing long into maybe challenging these upper levels and seeing something like what we saw here, watch ES lead now. Okay, watch the S&P 500 lead, and we'll look at that chart here in a little bit. But I think what will end up happening is that will pull up on Bitcoin. You can zip through this little volume area and get up to these levels. So that'd be a nice trade. Even though we haven't confirmed the color change yet, I think that you have to start leaning long here. Regarding that divergence, you'll notice that the S&P 500, Bitcoin actually hasn't really followed suit. This is a 30-minute real short time frame chart, right? So if you look from where we started from the gap over the weekend for the S&P 500, and we started, okay, so assume this is kind of together now, and the move gyrations have been following suit, come up, roll over, move higher. And then right about 1 o'clock today, the S&P 500 started to move higher, and Bitcoin did not follow suit. And so currently, we're floundering around here about 68, 67. I do expect a catch-up move. So watch for this trend line here to break in the next 24 hours. Keep an eye on this. Okay, because I think that will, especially if the S&P 500 continues to move up overnight, which I suspect it will. That's when they're making these moves. We get a move up overnight and a catch-up move. Now, if things technically break down on the S&P 500, of course, then I think that kind of blows the thesis for an up move. But I don't see that, and I see them making moves overnight higher and setting the tempo for the next day, which is typically what they do. Obviously cheaper to move the futures overnight because there's just lower volume and less resistance in the way. So if you're going to push the market up, overnight's the way to do it. And so I look for that for the clues, and that's why I think Bitcoin is, I'm leaning bullish here and looking for that Delta color change to take place. Now, if you look at the on-chain data, what do we have? We have our minor capitulation bands, this hash ribbons, they call it. And essentially, this is just showing us taking a couple of moving averages on the hash rate here, right? So this yellow line is a moving average. Using those moving average crossovers, much like we do when we're trading, to tell us whether is there a death cross, for example, when the 50 crosses down through the 200 period moving average is the death cross, right? Kind of similar thought on this capitulation. And what happens is, as long as we are crossed under the faster hash band or hash ribbon average is moving under the slower one, consider that minor capitulation, meaning they're switching off machines because it's not profitable. Usually you see that at the bottom of price declines. And you really don't see Bitcoin's price take off until the capitulation ends, when things, the faster average crosses back over, which coincides with more hash power average climbing back up. And then you start to see the difficulties increase because more hash power is coming online and price is coming back up as well. So typically you won't see price really start the next leg up until after you get the green light for the capitulation bands coming undone or uncapitulated. For example, this comes down, will cross back up, and then the capitulation phase is over, if you will. So we're waiting for that. And then I think, now keep in mind, this could last a while. We had one, this last one lasted about a month. We've had one previous to that last about a quarter or about 3 months. So, I even though I think we're tied to the market, this can drag up. And obviously if this starts moving up, miners will start switching on more hash power because obviously it's profitable at that point, and you will see this thing cross back up. So price will help confirm this, and once it turns green, usually it stays that way for a good long while, especially going into halving. Now you may get a period after halving if we get extra selling from miner holdbacks, then you might see this flip again, and as price stabilizes and miner stabilizes, and the difficulty will reset to where it's profitable for miners again, that kind of self-heals the situation there with the miners, and then we're back off and grinding higher. But I wouldn't look for that till after having for another recapitulation phase. Once this one turns green, I expect a decent move up. So there you have it. That's where we're at right now with Bitcoin this week. The only thing we'll leave you with is let's take a look at some virus data. And the only reason why we're looking at this is basically to see if we're, how much longer are we shut down. And if we're shut down for much longer, all of the halvings and market cycles aside, it's going to weigh on the economy. So we just don't want to go into a very long lockdown period where the economy is completely shut down. Now, if we look at yesterday, we had 26,641. That's under 30,000, which we were holding over. So a little bit of flattening in the numbers. Today, so far, we have 23,526. So we may eclipse tomorrow's number. What we want to see is if we continue to decline on new cases, if we do that for a couple more weeks, steady decline, and we don't see any more hotspot flare-ups, that's a win. And maybe we get back to normal life toward the latter half of May would be my guess based on the data and stuff like that. But we can't get back too early just because the math would say that we could cause a second wave to flare up, which would do more harm than good, really. So anyway, new deaths 1,500. That's down from a little bit too, and we don't see. UK obviously I think is playing some catch up here, so they might see a peak in the next couple of weeks, and we'll keep an eye on that. But the big leader, USA, for the amount of people that we have, the deaths, total deaths per 1 million population, we're doing a lot better than these other countries. So, obviously the efforts are working, but, still, I think we need to just make sure that we get it flattened and then we can get back to it. So maybe we're looking later half of May because looking at the data. But again, this is really week by week. So we just have to kind of interpret it as we go. But that would be, I think, a realistic expectation at this point based on the data. All right, guys. So anyway, that's it for this video. I hope it helps. If it does, please hit like and subscribe. Also, if you're interested in our ribbon indicator software, like this one did a nice job of calling the sell and the buy bounce in the S&P 500. It works on everything. This is just one example, but we also have training on this, how you can use it. And if you get into the room, do the $2.99 special. We're going to throw this in, some free indicators, and you'll get the buy signal on this as well, which complements it. So check it out. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Look forward to seeing you guys in the room, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
Trade Genius.